We need to have greater understanding of the challenges that this industry is facing in the public as a large, as well as any experts in the field. It's the problems that we're trying to solve, and the more people that we have from different fields getting into the arena and really contributing, the more likely we're going to be successful in the long run.
Hey, smart biotech scientists, welcome back. We are in the middle of a conversation about cultivated meat with Stephen Lang. And if you haven't listened to part 1 of our conversation, please go back and listen first to part 1. Stephen Lang is a biopharmaceutical leader with 20 years of experience in discovery to development, process improvement, and financial and strategic planning. Are you juggling the complexities of CMC development while trying to enjoy the beauty of biotech? Have you ever wondered if there's a way to simplify bioprocessing? Welcome to the Smart Biotech Scientist podcast, where we're diving headfirst into the very challenges you face. We're breaking it down, demystifying the jargon, and giving you the keys to unlock your full potential. I'm your host, David Brohlman, and I get it. With 15 plus years in the biotech industry, I face the same challenges you do. There's a way to simplify and streamline so you can remove complexity, you can skip trials and errors, deliver without delay your groundbreaking therapy to clinics and market, and still enjoy every single step. Do you want to learn how industry experts and I did it? Grab a cup of coffee and your favorite notebook and pen. Now is the time to take your bioprocessing game to the next level. Let's smarten up biotech. I want to shift gear a bit now because let's look at the downstream. We need to finally have a product that the consumer loves to eat, that has the right texture. We talked about the sensory aspects. Tell our listeners a bit, how do we do that? How do we improve that? And how do we get as close to traditional meat?
What I can say is that the analytics is going to be very important. And the analytics is what we're trying to do is connect the sensory attributes and sensory science to the nutritional and compositional attributes that are coming out of the biomass. And a lot of that biology is not well understood. We're starting to understand that. And every cell type is going to be a little bit different too. So we'll have to understand and be nimble on how we not only do the analytics, but then also our sensory attributes. So I got exposed to a lot of sensory analytics while I was at Upside. And there's a great group, an amazing group of analytical chemists who are really at the heart of that entire organization. So if you will, imagine a PD engineer and a media formulation scientist working together, maintain or increase something like, say, omega-3 fatty acids that we know is good for heart health. And they're trying to do it in this hot-off-the-press cell line from the cell line development group. So the first thing that they need to do is be able to figure out how to measure accurately that fatty acid in their sample type. And that's where the analytics group comes in. And analytics is critical in the cultivated meat industry because it touches on so many different aspects, from safety in collaboration with the quality organization, compositional analysis, as we were just talking with the scientists wanting to know what the nutritional attributes of the biomass are, sensory, of course, and regulatory affairs because they're generating the dossier data to support the filing. So the analytical scientists really need to be nimble as well as well-versed in the different techniques that they're capable of using, as well as in sample prep. Very important. And as the cultivated meat continues to evolve, the specifications are going to continue to evolve. And those specifications constantly moving make it a very big challenge for an analytical scientist to be able to generate the data necessary to keep the process moving. So further complicating that is a product life cycle. Food scientists are used to very short business cycles, and they're used to seeing their products on the market shelves. Whereas in biopharmaceuticals and in pharmaceuticals in general, the business cycle is very slow, can take 10 years or more to get a product to the market in a biopharmaceutical world. So this is another aspect of the cultivated meat industry where connecting the sensory to the analytics is a challenge because as we develop new products, either new products or new attributes to an existing product, we're going to have to develop new analytics for that. And then going back to the example of the PD engineer and the media formulation scientist working to increase the omega-3 fatty acid, let's assume that they achieved some process and media levers that increase the omega-3 fatty acids. But then it's the analytical scientist that's going to break the bad news to them that they've, in fact, while that's great, the omega-3 fatty acids are at a great level. What is the problem now is, say, something like putrescine is also increased. So their levers had a negative impact on the sensory attributes. And now the meat product has a off flavor. So they're going to have to go back to the drawing board and work all over again on improving the sensory attributes of that biomass.
Wow, that's a huge complexity. So compared to the established biopharma, where would you rank the analytics in the food industry? Is that comparable? It's just different, or is it much more complex than what we see in the more established biopharma?
Great question. And I think it could add a lot of different ways that I can answer this. In the typical biologics, I think the analytics around the typical biologics is pretty standard and well in tune with what is going on in the cultivated meat for the nutritionals and the compositional. On the other hand, when you're thinking about gene or cell therapy, that's where it gets a little bit more vague on what are we thinking about as analytics. And that's a little bit more similar to cultivated meat because what we're really working towards is sensory attributes that are described by humans. And as you know, humans have preferences for appearance, aroma, flavor, texture, and aftertaste that are influenced by a myriad of things, be it their culture, the time of day, the history of salt consumptions, things like that. So in the analytics, what we're trying to do in cultivated meat is to be able to define surrogates that we can measure objectively that then can tie to the human perception and be able to pull those levers in an appropriate way so that we can tune biomass to meet sensory perceptions on the human palate without having to go through the human tasting process.
Now, I want to touch upon the regulatory side as well for a second, because obviously cultivated meat is still quite novel. You mentioned in the beginning that we need also good leadership to make sure it's adopted. There are certain countries that, like Singapore or the US, they're really at the front lines. What needs to happen on the regulatory landscape side, or like how do we navigate that tension in order to get the widespread adoption?
I think the regulatory is going to be one of those really innovative areas because we're basing the regulatory standards with the FDA and now working with the USDA based on essentially all of the work that's been done in biopharmaceutical. But we're scaling that back, not to say that we're having a less rigorous. It's actually, I would say, more rigorous because we have the FDA and the USDA involved. But it should be viewed as an advantage to the industry as a whole because cultivated meat's novelty will require that we have innovation in the regulatory space as well. We cannot regulate it like a biopharmaceutical and still have a viable product at the end. And some of those changes that we see in the regulatory thinking that's still going to lead to a safe and efficacious product may be beneficial to the biopharmaceutical industry. So that's why I'm really encouraging people to watch the cultivated meat space because there are going to be innovations coming out of that space because we're pushing the envelope so hard that may benefit other fields such as biopharmaceuticals.
Yeah, speaking of innovations, Stephen, where do you see the space going in the next 5 to 10 years? And especially also what needs to happen because we need to collaborate with all the different people on board, the scientists, the investors, the CEOs, the leaders, the regulatory leaders, and so on.
Yeah, I think over the next 5 years or so, we're really going to come to some sort of value proposition for cultivated meat. And that value proposition has been evolving. But the problem is right now, I don't know that we have all of the science necessary to really understand what it takes to create functional biomass at scale. And that's where we need to have innovation in all different fields. But my concern is if without that value proposition right now in the beginning, it may lead us to a point where the first products coming out will be poor facsimiles of conventional meat. And this could result in a consumer backlash, very much like what has happened in the early days of veggie burgers. I'm sure you had a bad veggie burger in your life. And it took a long time for the technology to catch up and for plant-based burgers to really kind of regain some of that lost consumer confidence. And I worry that the early cultivated meat versions may cause a similar backlash, especially in today's tinderbox of techno-skepticism and misinformation and political grandstanding, if you will, about protecting meat conglomerates.
That's a very good point. I think the customer experience is key. I mean, and once you have destroyed the image, it takes a long time to build it back up. I think that's a big point. Now, we have talked a lot about complexity. Yeah, it's very complex, the development of cultivated meat, but nevertheless, let's make it very practical towards the end of our conversation. Could you outline the crucial steps that we as scientists need to follow to develop a robust, scalable, and cost-efficient production process for cultured meat?
That is a great question and a really tall order. It's something that we can certainly discuss for many hours. Let me simply say that we need to have greater understanding of the challenges that this industry is facing in the public as a large, as well as in the experts in the field. It's the problems that we're trying to solve, and the more people that we have from different fields getting into the arena and really contributing, the more likely we're going to be successful in the long run. But getting into the critical steps, it is such a multifaceted problem, as I've tried to convey earlier, in that it's not just about the science, it's not just about the technology, it's also about bringing the consumer along, the regulatory agencies along with this journey that we're on. And it's going to take more time than we can dive into in this short time that we've got here.
Fantastic, Stephen. Thank you for sharing all these insights and your thoughts and very critical thoughts about the progress of cultivated meat. What is the most important takeaway from our conversation today?
I would say that the cultivated meat industry promises to spur a lot of innovation in the cell culture arena, and because of the technical, environmental, and societal challenges that it's facing. Biotech scientists and engineers should really watch this space for precedents or innovations that can be ported over into other biotech endeavors to accelerate that innovation. Everyone is really interested, regardless of what biotech field you're in, is moving faster. And with the challenges that the cultivated meat industry is trying to take on, some of those innovations and solutions will be able to help us move medicines faster, medical devices faster, and getting things to the market that can really have a positive impact on human health. So I think that's probably the most important thing to take away from this conversation.
Stephen, where can people connect with you?
Fantastic. LinkedIn is best for right now. I will have a link to my new company up there shortly, so they can reach out to me through that. That would be great.
Yeah, I will leave the link down in the show notes. Please do reach out to Stephen. We'd love to hear from you, what you think, and we need to collaborate in the industry. So that's really the spirit also we want to create. So please use this opportunity. So thank you so much again, Stephen, for being on the show today. It was a huge pleasure.
Thank you, David. It was really nice talking with you, and look forward to your next one.
Thank you for tuning in today. What do you think about this episode on cultivated meat with Stephen Lang? You can let us know by leaving a review on the platform you found us on. And perhaps you are unsure how to develop a robust, scalable, and cost-efficient production process yourself. Well, I want to offer you a free 30-minute call to help you get started. So book the call using the link in the show notes. All right, smart scientists. That's all for today on the Smart Biotech Scientist podcast. Thank you for tuning in and joining us on your journey to bioprocess mastery. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. By doing so, we can empower more scientists like you. For additional bioprocessing tips, visit us at smartbiotechscientist.com. Stay tuned for more inspiring biotech insights in our next episode. Until then, let's continue to smarten up biotech.